So today we're going to talk about some of the newer science, and especially we're going to concentrate on the science around the pigments found in AFA microalgae. A question I often hear is, if plant pigments or some other plant nutrient is so great for us, why is it that I don't see more science proving this? And the reason is because of the complexity and cost of large-scale efficacy testing of natural compounds as they're found in foods. A study of dietary supplementation with plant pigments and other chemopreventers has not yet been undertaken. A lot of people don't realize, studies are great. They give us very specific information that's extremely useful. By their very definition, they are a narrow snapshot of a single thing normally. So trying to judge the effect of an entire food, a whole food in particular that may have thousands, if not tens of thousands of nutrients and nutrient interactions, it's nearly impossible with the modern scientific model that we use. But there are several studies that have been done both in vivo and in vitro, which means in test tubes and in living things, on specific pigments. So they isolate a pigment, then they can more easily test to see what is the specific benefit or benefits that they find looking at a specific single thing. So tonight we're focusing on pigments. Light harvesting pigments are the building blocks of plant, and science is now really realizing and discovering also animal metabolism. The most common light harvesting pigments are chlorophyll, which is the green pigment found in all green plants. Carotenoids, the most common are zeaxanthine, lutein, and anthocyanins. And then one that we call phycocyanin. And on this image you see here, you actually see anthocyanins and betalain. Anthocyanins is the blue-red pigment found in almost every vegetable or fruit. Phycocyanin, on the other hand, is actually only found in blue-green algae. So even though there are many more plants with anthocyanins, and frankly a lot more science on anthocyanins, I am not focusing on that because I really am focusing on some of the unique characteristics in the light pigment and the light pigment combination found in the ancient blue-green algae food. First, let's look at chlorophyll. Chlorophyll has an intimate relationship to heme, which is the red pigment in our blood. Heme carries oxygen for us. And in essence, heme, which is essential for oxygen metabolism in animals, was derived nearly exactly from chlorophyll, which is essential to plant metabolism. So it's fascinating to me that quite literally almost the only difference is a single molecule of a mineral in the very center of this quite complex structure. This has a lot of potential benefits to humans that heme is so very close to chlorophyll. We know that chlorophyll aids in gastrointestinal problems, and the reason for that appears to be multifold. It certainly includes that chlorophyll is an antioxidant. It is an antitoxin. It can absorb and neutralize certain toxins. Chlorophyll does promote the formation of hemoglobin and red blood cells, which is one of the things that we would expect since the molecules are so similar. The work the body has to do to convert this element of magnesium in chlorophyll and replace it with iron to create hemoglobin is a very small amount of work. So eating chlorophyll is really like a blood pump up, a blood health pump up. Chlorophyll detoxifies toxins that cause cancer, among other issues. It's beneficial in assimilating calcium and other heavy minerals, and actually it is beneficial in helping you to reduce heavy mineral assimilation. So this actually is not a correct statement. I didn't write this, but I want to clarify that. It's beneficial in assimilating calcium and beneficial in removing other heavy minerals. And then it does fight infections. And that probably, at least in part, has to do with its ability to increase oxygen capacity in the red blood cell by converting to heme. And oxygen is the enemy of infection. Chlorophyll, and very recently, was proven to actually work directly with human mitochondria, aiding in the creation of ATP, which is energy that we use to burn. That is human energy, mammal energy. So eating chlorophyll can directly affect the production and cycling of the coenzyme Q10 in your mitochondria, which is your energy factory in your cells. So this means that, like plants, humans can create energy directly from the sun. This is something that was completely an unexpected discovery, and it has a fascinating downstream of benefits that we can see now maybe occurring, because energy production, safe energy production with the use of coenzyme Q10 is the cornerstone of healthy metabolism and the reduction of free radical damage that can lead to aging, along with other disease processes. The carotenoid family is the orange-red pigment family. It's a very important group of phytonutrients, and it's found in many, many vegetables and fruits. It's abundant. The epidemiological, which means the long-term studies, and the clinical studies, which means regular science, like you would isolate something in a lab, indicate that carotenoids protect against the development of a variety of chronic diseases. Lutein and zeaxanthin, in particular, are essential for eye health. Beta-carotene and lycopene protect from sun damage. Lutein and lycopene are important for cardiovascular health. And then lycopene has been shown to help prevent prostate cancer. Now, lutein and zeaxanthin are found in many, many fruits and vegetables. They are found in AFA blue-green algae. AFA blue-green algae is a phenomenal source of beta-carotene. Lycopene is found almost completely in and only in tomatoes. So lycopene is unique to the tomato family. Lutein, as I said, is found in blue-green algae. And what's fascinating to me is when you look at the areas that carotenoids affect, at the bottom you see its benefits for preventing or helping to make better some of the symptoms of chronic diseases. But at the top, you get to see what carotenoids do directly in our body. Beta-carotene turns into vitamin A. Actually, we don't eat vitamin A. If you eat vitamin A, your body doesn't even know what the heck you just did. We will make provitamin A, vitamin A, in our stomach with an enzyme that we have in a healthy stomach. So you need beta-carotene to create vitamin A that is assimilable. Carotenoids are powerful antioxidants. That's one reason they're so beneficial for circulatory health and eye health. They regulate gene transcription. So now we're getting into where you may have a certain type of genetic information you're born with, but the genetic expression that you carry with you is directly affected by vitamins and minerals, including carotenoids. Gap junction communication, this is the communication that exists in your nervous system, is dependent on carotenoids. Phase 2 of metabolism is dependent on carotenoids, and your immune response is dependent on carotenoids. So it makes sense that in chronic diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, macular degeneration, or photosensitivity that's from UV light, carotenoids can help prevent or ameliorate the effects of these issues. One of the rarest to find light harvesting pigments is in the Phycocyanin family. They are found in only the most ancient of foods, which is cyanobacteria. And this is a picture of purified Phycocyanin. And I love this little illustration. This is the sunlight. And these little green tubules down here represent chlorophyll. That's actually a shape chlorophyll will take in a microcellular being. But what gets to the chlorophyll, which fascinates me, is actually called a phycobilosome antenna. So phycocyanin creates an antenna that funnels sunlight into chlorophyll. And only from there does the chlorophyll then activate. So in its very early essence, the phycobilosome is what allowed chlorophyll to create energy from sunlight for plants. Now, the phycobilosome is found in all cells, but phycocyanin, which is the pigment that the phycobilisome can create is only found in the algae. So in recent years, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, phycocyanin has become the focus of dozens of studies because of its unique and especially beneficial properties for health. Phycocyanin is a natural blue-green pigment. It works in conjunction with chlorophyll, as I showed you. Research shows it's a very powerful antioxidant, many, many times more powerful than any other antioxidant that's been found. It has anti-inflammatory properties, in part because of its antioxidant activity, but for other reasons as well. And it's also shown to preferentially protect healthy brain and nerve function. In other words, phycocyanin will help your body protect your nerve and brain function above and beyond anything else that you may have in your diet. The pigments related to phycocyanin include the exact same pigments that your body uses to heal wounds like bruising. This is important because you actually get to see a picture of the healing process. These colors are not an accident. These colors are healing your body. It starts with the purple, which is the phycocyanin color. We produce other things that are not phycocyanin, but they replicate that color. But what the science has discovered is eating the pigments that mimic these colors, phycocyanin, anthocyanin, chlorophyll, the carotenoids. When you eat the pigments, your body has a greater capacity to go through this healing process more quickly. So it's fascinating that what you eat can be directly used by your body to help you heal. But phycocyanin does even more. And this is really cutting edge research, folks. This is something that science has really only in the last 2 or 3 years really begun to take a look at and understand the power of. Phycocyanin helps your body to create what's called a heat shock protein. A heat shock protein is a group of tightly conserved or highly conserved proteins. This means your body saves them back. They're so important. And they're found in all types of cells. They are involved in a wide range of cellular processes, such as assisting protein folding and degradation of misfolded proteins. They modulate the signaling pathways from the DNA to your nervous system and back, and they regulate immune responses. So protein folding and degradation of misfolded proteins. Protein molecules are huge. They're very, very large in relationship to the rest of the body. And so they don't just exist as great big huge masses. They wouldn't make it, your blood would thicken up and you would have a heart attack. So they are actually folded like you would fold an origami swan. And then that's how they work, is in these folded shapes. And misfolded proteins is one of the #1 things that happen as we age. And if we have genetic information that isn't quite accurate, it starts to misfold proteins, and these misfolded proteins cause a multitude of problems even before any disease would ever happen. So a heat shock protein helps prevent the misfolded protein happening from misinformation. The multifunctional nature of heat shock proteins enable them to play critical roles in the regulation of protein homeostasis. That means keeping proteins regulated, which helps your cells to survive longer. Heat shock proteins are also known as chaperone proteins. This is another name for them, and it's another function that they do. They help other proteins fold up correctly. In other words, they're like a map for the origami folding. Many cells produce chaperone proteins after a cell has been exposed to high temperatures, elevated temperatures, high pH, which is why it's called a heat shock protein. The body is shocked with heat, and it produces these chaperone proteins to help prevent the damage that would occur from the insulting event, the heat. And what's interesting is, for example, the disease cystic fibrosis is a hereditary disorder which affects the chaperone proteins that help a very vital protein that moves ions across cell membranes to help that fold correctly so it can do its job to move these ions. In this hereditary disorder, the chaperone proteins don't work correctly. So they can't help that ion across the cell membrane correctly, and you get somebody with cystic fibrosis. They've also discovered that protein clumping or misfolded proteins in the brain is a part of what causes Alzheimer's diseases, and they are pretty sure that, at least in part, again, it's due to faulty chaperone proteins. Your body quits producing the chaperone proteins that help it keep the proteins in your brain folded correctly so you don't get these clumps that begin to inhibit your nerve system. And what's fascinating is phycocyanin appears to help promote the formation of these heat shock and chaperone proteins. Phycocyanin may also help protect and moderate astrocyte or glial cells in the brain. And an astrocyte is a very specific type of cell in the brain. Astrocytes compose many different portions of the brain, and they have various functions, and they use various functions to overcome oxidative stress. Your brain uses about 20% of the oxygen in your body. And whenever you have a high oxygen use in a tissue, you have a high likelihood of creating oxidative stress, because oxygen creates oxygen species radicals that are free radicals that damage. So you really need something to help overcome oxidative stress in the brain. Phycocyanin appears to mediate and offer antioxidant effects of the astrocytes. In a recent study, given phycocyanin to rats who had had a stroke, an ischemic stroke, ensured neuroprotection. It reduced the size of the stroke area, and it improved the behavioral deficits after the stroke. Phycocyanin also enhanced viability and proliferation of brain cells while encouraging the death of the heavy oxidized or damaged astrocyte cells without any cytotoxicity or damage to normal cells and neurons. So in other words, phycocyanin helps stimulate your brain to produce more new healthy cells, encouraging the death of the damaged cells, but without damaging the normal cells after a stroke. This is huge, because the number one issue with a stroke is recovery of brain function after damage to these very sensitive cells that are difficult to reproduce. So that phycocyanin can help you reproduce them safely is a phenomenal benefit. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about New Earth. We know that microalgae is a very fragile organism. We use a very sophisticated technology with checks and balances from before we harvest all the way through before we and after we bottle. So we have quick cooling, multiple cleanings, water removal, incredibly fast freezing, and multiple third-party testing in less than 5 hours. We are, without a shadow of a doubt, the safest, most tested microalgae product anywhere on the marketplace. 1 second, and I'm going to